ahead. Okay.
Hi, I'm Paul McGuire here by the United Nations. It's noisy as usual as diplomats drive in all directions, sometimes in armored cars, etc. But behind me is the United Nations, which is the de facto global government. And I want to crouch down so I can kind of get closer to you. They had a UN convention about a couple of weeks ago where they plan to radically transform the world by 2030 through sustainable development. Now that sounds like a very wonderful plan until you understand what sustainable development is. And sustainable development is essentially code for we're going to redistribute the wealth. Now some people think, well, gee, Paul, that's fair. But is it fair? Because the way the plan works is they're going to redistribute the wealth from the lower middle class and the hardworking lower class. But let's remember that the lower class and the middle class only own 1% of the wealth, even though they represent 99% of the population. Conversely, the elite, they represent 1% of the population, but they control 99% of the wealth. So if you're really trying to do what's fair, if you're really trying to have income equality, quote, or social justice, quote, then why would you leave the vast wealth of the 1%? You totally don't touch their wealth. They're totally protected. Yet they own 99% of the wealth and resources, but nobody touches their wealth. But you take the hardworking middle class and the hardworking lower class who only have 1% of the wealth, but have 99% of the population, and you target your programs to confiscate their wealth. That is criminal. And that exposes the fraud and the deceit of the United Nations plan. Because you see, it's the UN is essentially playing a con game. They are used by the global elite to erect a global government, and this global government is nothing more than a global feudal state where the elite will live like kings and queens, and the rest of us will live like serfs or slaves on their global plantation. Now you say, Paul, those are extreme words. They may be extreme words, but if you read the writings of the UN, as we have carefully documented in our book, The Babylon Code, you discover that this was the plan all along. A plan for a global government, a plan for a global economic system, and a plan for a global religion. In other words, it's the rebuilding of ancient Babylon, because Babylon, under Nimrod, was the world's first one-world government, one-world religion, and one-world economic system. And in the last days, the prophets tell us, specifically in Revelation 17 and 18, that Babylon will return. So I can't tell you whether the United Nations per se is going to be the Babylon, but it certainly represents the beginning of a Babylon, and that's not going to be good for the average person. On top of that, Bible prophecy says that the global government will eventually be headed, not beheaded, that was a Freudian slip. The global government will be beheaded. That's what I slipped up saying. Yeah, well, kind of that's true. Because the false prophet will come along. He will head up a one-world religion and a one-world economic system, and you will get a mark of the beast, a microchip implant, if you promise to worship the Antichrist as God. But if you refuse to worship the Antichrist as God, yes, you will be beheaded according to the book of Revelation. And that's not good news, because part of this global system is the mark of the beast. I'm Paul McGuire. You can go to my website, paulmcguire.us, and we have tons of free articles and YouTubes for you. God bless you. I'm Paul McGuire here at the UN.